Hello everyone, this is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of Eye of the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful, King Dio, and Rabbit Hole. And Nintendo has reached a new milestone, a glorious new milestone for this company, in that every single game on the Famitsu Top 30 Bestsellers list is, in fact, a Nintendo exclusive. Now, you may not understand how big of a deal this is. This hasn't happened since like 1988, since Nintendo dominated the console industry with the Famicom. This is a new indication of just where consoles are going in the future. Like the future of video game franchises as a whole. In that, like, the Nintendo Switch is an extremely popular, profitable console for all companies. We are past the time. We are past the age of companies like Microsoft and Sony being able to bribe third parties with these timed exclusive contracts and being able to like manipulate game journalists into praising bad games. We're kind of at the point now where people are actively rebelling against the anti-Nintendo narrative, right? We are actively seeing people get angry at third-party developers for refusing to develop on Switch. We've seen this happen a couple of times, especially in Japan, with like where some developer, Nagoshi, the Yakuza guy, what's another example? We were just talking about this on Discord. Let me look. Yeah, Danganronpa finally came to Switch after its creator not to know the Switch even existed for a while. Yep, Nagoshi got a demotion. Senran Kagura, was stayed on went to PlayStation after fanboy loyalty. Yep. Even after Sony like fucked him over. Yep. The Tunia remake of a remake eats shit because it's PS5 exclusive. Yeah. Square Enix massively underprints Switch games on purpose and tries their hardest to sabotage Switch versions of multiplats. Yep. Yeah. We're seeing this over and over and over again, in which these companies that clearly favor PlayStation, that desperately want PlayStation to continue being successful in order to continue getting these bonuses and these sort of like massive advertising campaigns and have that control over the gaming journalism industry that they need in order to survive. They're trying so hard to shit on the Switch, to shit on Nintendo, to continue this little cabal, this little conspiracy, and it's falling apart at the seams because people just don't want to put up with it anymore. Like, there's no real reason for games like this, for games like Yakuza, games like Danganronpa, games like Senran Kagura to not be readily available on Switch. There's no justification for it. There never was. That is the main thing I think people are like finally starting to grasp when it comes to these third-party developers. Because like over the past decade, right, the narrative has always been that like, oh yeah, Nintendo mistreats the third parties. They don't give them what they want. They don't give them powerful enough hardware to work with. Their games don't sell on hardware. But that's not true. We're in an age now where Nintendo is putting out games that are significantly more technically demanding than the stuff we're seeing on other consoles. Stuff like Breath of the Wild has more of a physics engine than anything in Skyrim. The graphics are more beautiful. You can see things at a much farther distance. Like, sure, it's not realistic, but that doesn't mean the visual quality isn't as good or better. And of course, it has like more elements to it. Like the gameplay is better. Like this idea that games like that these massive games like Monster Hunter World can't run on Switch, it's just nonsense. Like, it just isn't true. As we've seen with like Monster Hunter Rise and just being like, running on this engine that supposedly wasn't able to run on Switch. It's kind of remarkable how this video game console can play video games if a developer actually puts the time and effort into developing for it. That's where we're at. Like, companies are having a hard time getting their audiences to not care about Nintendo consoles. Like, they're having a hard time getting people to care about their games, period. Again, like we've seen this has been over the past decade. We've seen a lot of like creators like sort of fall from grace over the past decade, right? Like Kojima, of course, is probably the most notable, but we've seen like people like Nagoshi getting demoted. Yakuza is kind of stagnant. You have Sakaguchi is never going to put out like a AAA game again. Like there hasn't been like these old like tired like game directors, people like Kamiya, like who are desperately trying to like continue keeping these keeping the multi-plat system alive. Like they're dying. Like they just aren't putting out the content they used to, and as a result of it, the audience doesn't care. Meanwhile, Nintendo is putting out new exciting content every day, like almost. Like it's remarkable how we go from like a hotly received Nintendo Direct, where we get all this cool stuff, including a new Metroid game, and then we get an indie Direct full of stuff for like all sorts of different audiences, including a Jet Set Radio spiritual successor, right? A big deal for Sega fans. And then we get like a Pokemon Direct, a couple of months later, where we learn more about the new upcoming Pokemon remakes, Pokemon Legends Arceus, and possibly some new projects. There's all sorts of things that they could talk about in that showing that we haven't seen yet. Like, there's all sorts of things that we could see from the Switch going forward. And, Switch is just stomping the competition, and you don't see enough people talking about it. Like, in the PS4 generation, all anybody wanted to talk about was sales, right? But now, when Nintendo is dominating, you have people like Daniel Ahmed and the Snoys desperately wanting to talk about like anything other than sales, because they know they can't compete, right? They know they can't be successful. They know they're losing, and they're losing badly. And with this, without sales, without this like facade of popularity, like PlayStation really has nothing. Like when you get down to it, their games aren't as memorable, they aren't as good, they aren't as engaging. Nobody's going to be playing them like 10, 20, 30 years from now. Just like nobody is playing Crash now. It's just Nintendo was always superior. They always were. From like the N64 to the Wii U, it was always just like the underdog. These massive corporations came in with their billions of dollars trying to like fuck over Nintendo in order to like establish themselves as the king of the console industry, and now the world has passed them by. Nintendo has established themselves as the go-to console for hardcore and casual gamers. Anyone who really wants to play a high quality game owns a Nintendo console. There's no audience for Xbox or PlayStation anymore. There's no appeal to it. Like back in the day, you could buy a PS2 for a DVD player and never even own a game for it. But these days, you have like all these other more affordable options. Like there's no point in owning a PlayStation in 2021. There are no games, and the add-on features, the multimedia features aren't as appealing as they used to be. PlayStation is essentially over, and it's only a matter of time until the general public begins to acknowledge that.